Today's talk is entitled Hydrogen Plasma Orbs and the Russian Explosion. This is going to be a difficult one for anyone to understand. Anyone who hasn't been following my research are probably not even going to get there. So I normally at this point will point people through to videos that I have made in the past. Obviously I've made a video about Tunguska and the explosion in the sky of the tube, which was witnessed by people. That would be a good reference point, but until anyone really tries to grasp my 2 decades of research, they're not going to understand it. So I've been predicting more of these fireballs in the sky. They're not meteorites. You will have matter falling from them, but they're not the classical idea of a meteorite, or meteor. They are exploding balls of combustible gas. I would suspect that it's hydrogen. So I need to explain where I'm coming from the point of the research. So I've done a study into the orb bar wave process. There's enough of my stuff. I've written a book on it back in 2006. Obviously there are additional theories that have been generated from that research. And so I just want to talk about what an orb is, or how I see them, because as soon as you can understand that, then you can understand that there are different types of orbs, and some of them will carry gas, hydrogen from outside our atmosphere, actually charge it to their surface as they enter into our atmosphere and explode in the upper atmospheres. So a lot of these things that they name as hard pieces of rock or metal aren't what they say. So we have orbs that carry different things. I've put up a lorry and a car, and they deliver goods or people or whatever, but basically they're vehicles, and the orb is a vehicle of distributing energy. I know this may sound strange, but the soul I include in that. So this life force or creative force delivers energy to plants. Our intensive studies suggest that. The orb also, in its web format, which nobody will understand, so I'm not asking them to bother to understand unless they start repeating the 2 decades of research. They have webs and they appear like biological processes. Ball lightning, which is a scientific phenomenon which happens very infrequently, is a lightning or electrical charge striking an orb, and then it becomes a plasma ball. Now these are the things that we're interested in today's talk, but I would also like to highlight the differences between what kind of things can be created out of the orb. We have planets, not gravity but electromagnetism form them, and they're formed on the sphere of the orb. We have the what I'm going to be doing another video on, which is the WIMP orb, and anyone studying dark matter will recognize that name. That will follow shortly. We have the orb fugalite theory, where and this is linked very much to the to what is so-called asteroids. It's matter fused in our atmosphere, and anybody coming to this new should have a look at some of my videos on the orb fugalite theory. and the geological sampling that I hold. So that is 20 years of bits and bobs there. Most people are going to struggle to understand what I'm saying. There is a process called the Orbs wave which carries energy around the universe. It's a fractal string theory, but I don't want to go into the details of that. I'll bore the living daylights out of people. So we'll go back to the fundamentals of a meteorite. And what is a meteorite? So this is from Wikipedia, or meteorite classification. The ultimate goal of meteorite classification is to group all meteorite specimens that share a common origin on a single identifiable parent body. Meteorites are often divided into 3 overall categories based on whether they're dominantly composed of rocky material, metallic material, or mixtures. These categories have been used since the 19th century, 1920s science. We're held back by 18th and 19th century science, but do not have much genetic significance. They are simply a tradition and a convenient way of grouping specimens. In fact, stony iron is a misnomer. The fall phenomenon. So what I'm describing is what a meteorite should be made of and what it should do. And there's a lot of these false thinking in science. There is no such thing as a vacuum. Electron is not a fundamental particle because it's made up of other particles. So how can you call something a vacuum when there's stuff inside it, and how you call a fundamental particle when it's not fundamental? And so we have meteorites that are made up of hard, stony, silicate and iron materials. So they should do a certain thing under the Newtonian model. So how they should fall. Most meteorites disintegrate when entering the Earth's atmosphere. They travel at 20 to 30,000 kilometers an hour. However, estimated 500 meteorites ranging from marble to basketball larger to reach the surface of the Earth. Only 5 or 6 are typically recovered. Few meteorites are large enough to create an impact. Instead, they arrive at the surface at their terminal velocity and at most create a small pit. Even so, falling meteorites have reportedly caused damage to property and injured livestock. So, where's the exploding bit? How do they explode in the sky? These are the questions we have to ask ourselves. Are these things, what they're telling us, a meteorite, or are they just a vacuum? Or are they just a fundamental particle? These are, I should really do a video on all this science terminology that doesn't exist. It's a bit like unicorns and leprechauns. They know these states don't exist. So we have now a meteorite. And this is not a meteorite what we've seen. The Russian A Russian politician suggests that it was a US weapons test. This is from The Independent. Mainly because of the explosion in the sky. Because meteorites don't do that. There were 2 condensation trails reported by eyewitnesses and 2 explosions. And of course The Independent, a British newspaper, then say that this Russian politician who says that it was a US weapons test is then ridiculed as an idiot. he is probably understanding that this is not a meteorite and then drawing the wrong conclusions to it, because there's no other science that he can draw on. He doesn't understand. If he saw the Tunguska event, he would say it was a nuclear weapon as well. But this is dangerous, because this can lead us into areas of problems. If a nation thinks it's under fire, it could offer counter responses to that. So these are particularly dangerous ways of thinking of things. And the scientists who are covering these things up would ultimately be accountable if such actions were taken. Anyway, this doesn't fit the behavior of this meteorite, meteor, asteroid, whatever you want to call it, depending on what stage it's at. Doesn't fit the model. In a recent coast-to-coast interview, one of the people, American national who'd married a Russian girl, rang in to say that there were 2 condensation trails, there were 2 explosions, and he came to also the wrong type of thinking, based on what he observed that was not a meteorite. And he suggested that the 2 explosions were the shooting down, the 2 trails of a UFO. And so we have 2 sets of wrong thinking, based on observation. It's based on what they saw, and they don't believe it to be a meteorite. Neither do I, but I don't believe either of those 2 options. And if they spend a bit of time with me, those people, they probably wouldn't want to, but they would begin to see what I'm talking about in the evidence that I hold. And so now I have to explain these 2 asteroids, because obviously other people, or 2 condensation trails. NASA then tried to explain it away, as they usually do. They don't say much about what's been seen in space. But the obvious evidence is that this meteorite exploded over Russia. Reuters discuss it in that terminology. You only have to look at the images to know that it exploded in the atmosphere. And I think it's an old aluminium smelting work, the top of the building is blown away while the bottom's intact. Not reminiscent of something hitting the floor and causing a shockwave. This is an explosion in the sky. Meteor showers in the Ural Mountains. A powerful blast, it's reported as. Upper parts of the building smashed whilst the windows below it are intact. This is an airburst. This is a hydrogen explosion in the atmosphere. And yet we turn to the media again, and it's a meteor that crashed in Russia. It hit the Earth and then caused these problems. But that is not the way the witnesses saw it. That is not what they observed. It's what a newspaper's telling us. It's telling us that what the people observed is not correct. They know better. Well, were they there? No, they weren't. But they know better. They know the process that this is undergoing, because it's a meteorite. And of course it's a load of nonsense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how this process works. The phenomenon of orbs have been seen in space. You only have to look at the tether incident. What I did is I put some flour on my worktop. This is from a previous video trying to explain the electrification of an orb. The orb travels in space. It picks up hydrogen. So this, if you imagine, this is powdered hydrogen. And as the orb becomes electrified, hydrogen is absorbed into the core of the orb, and also as it comes into the Earth's atmosphere, it picks up material from the Earth itself. So you'll get a crackling sound or whatever, like most of the UFO abductees have had when they see these plasma balls. The electromagnetism affects the mind as well. And so I made a prediction in the previous videos that fireballs would start to increase, and they have. I also made a prediction that stone spheres would increase, because if lightning strikes one of those orbs in that state where there's very little gas but more Arizona dust, say, so the orb, rather than picking up gas from the upper atmosphere or from space, now picks up dust from the desert, and a lightning strikes it, hey presto, the stone spheres fall from the sky. Like this Frenchman, while he was walking through a field, heard a thud by the side of him, and he has got a fused orb, the orb fugalite theory. And so these orbs seen in space, the tether video, most people will that are really interested in finding the truth out will recognize the tether incident. These are images from my study data. These are images from space. The orb picks up these gases and moves through space. As it moves through space and through the weakened magnetic field, it can breach the magnetic field of the Earth. I recently put up a tether video onto my site at 1:38. I've highlighted in those red squares orbs that change state from a single state to a paired state. That will explain why the two explosions, probably will explain why the two explosions occurred. When they separated, you get the two condensation trails or the two explosions. It's a little bit difficult to go into. So what we're seeing now is orbs from space, as I predicted, or becoming electrified as they enter into the Earth's atmosphere. Not meteorites. And obviously matter fuses to them, and if there's an explosion, that matter will fall from the ground. So let's have a look at this Frenchman again, the sphere that he's holding in his hand. What happens is that they fall in a certain way and have been recorded for 4 months falling from the sky in 1921. They also were recorded by Hans Glaser in the other solar minimums of 1561 and 1565. And a final image from this meteorite is where the other trail hit the ground. Now, if this is a real image, firstly the hole is circular. The meteorite was traveling parallel to the ground, which is a funny angle to be moving anyway. And it's created this absolutely perfect circular hole. So either this is some sort of con, or that one of these round stone spheres, large, like we see on the surface of Mars, has hit the ice and fallen and through the heat of it falling, because these do not fall at normal speed in relative to gravity. These have been observed falling very, very slowly from the sky. I know this sounds strange, but these spheres are warm, and a fall from the sky has melted the ice and sunk to the bottom of that lake. It's either a fishing hole, and something has been put up as a meteor strike, or they will found one of these round geodes underneath it, or fragments of it. Very, very strange for people to comprehend. Something that I've been predicting for years, and it's about time major scientists started to look me up and put some funding into the university where I work. Thank you very much. Goodbye.